Normally, my videos are funny and entertaining, but I feel I must take a moment to talk about something very serious. For the last month, it seems as though the only thing anyone talks about in the news anymore is gun control. Interestingly, back in 2002, when I first started writing my novel, Pandora's Box, that was also a hot-button issue, and one of the inspirations for the story. Then it faded from the news, and I started to wonder if my book wasn't quite as relevant anymore. Unfortunately, in the last month, that's not the case. It has become more relevant. I don't normally get political in my videos, on my blog, or on my website. I prefer to talk about creativity. But in this case, my creativity and my politics have joined forces. I feel I must contribute something to the discussion that has been going on, and as a writer, I feel that my opinions are expressed best in stories. So I'm going to read an excerpt from my novel that best illustrates my opinion on this matter. Just to warn you, this excerpt will contain spoilers, so if you don't want the book ruined, I suggest you quit watching the video. Now, to put this into context, at this point in the story, Pandora, the heroine, has survived one battle to take the base that is housing the world's last stockpile of weapons of mass destruction. She was the sole survivor, and now there's been a second battle in which the base was taken, and now she is being interrogated by the dictator who intended to get these WMDs in order to win the war that he has been waging. "You wasted your time," she said, "and now without those WMDs, your little crusade will be crushed. The war is over." Erebus turned and stepped toward Pandora, looming over her like a god. "If you'd heard the news from the front since you were trapped here, you would not make such arrogant statements. Without weapons to use or fight over, your war will end soon enough." Erebus laughed. It was strange, and yet not. Pandora was more afraid of him now. "You honestly believe this project will succeed?" asked Erebus. "That you can end a war by ridding yourself of the weapons?" Pandora did not answer. Erebus's pause told her it was not a rhetorical question. "Faisal, give me your pistol," Erebus said to the soldier standing behind Pandora, holding out his hand. The soldier quickly obeyed. Pandora's fear was betrayed only by a few drops of sweat. Erebus took the gun, an old automatic slug spitter, cocked it, and pressed it against Pandora's forehead. She stifled a gasp as the icy barrel sent a chill from her hot forehead down her body. "All I have to do," Erebus said, his voice as cold as the gun, "is squeeze my hand an inch back, and you, my enemy, will be nothing more than a smear on the floor. Swallow your fear, swallow your fear," Pandora kept repeating in her head. "But your own life does not concern you, even if your child dies with you? No. You're a soldier. But..." He slowly lowered the gun down her body and pressed it against her stomach. Oceans of sweat poured down Pandora's face. The baby jumped as if sensing danger. The pain in her abdomen doubled, and she grimaced slightly. "Could you live with the grief of losing a child as the life slowly drained out of you?" Erebus seized her gaze with his. "Well, could you?" he shouted, pulling the trigger. Pandora screamed. It echoed through the room. There was more pain, but it was in her right thigh. Pandora glanced down. There was a bullet hole in the floor next to her leg. Erebus had moved the gun, and the bullet grazed her thigh. Blood trickled down onto the floor. She looked up, her breaths short and fast, hoping her scowl was hiding the pain. "I hurt you," said Erebus. "We are at war." He raised the gun and held it out in front of Pandora. "Take the gun from me." "What?" Pandora glared at him with hate and bewilderment. "Do it!" Erebus ordered, his face contorting with anger. Pandora swatted it out of his hand. Erebus stepped back and held his hands up, showing they were empty. "You have disarmed me. I have no weapons." He clenched his cyber fist. "But I still have my hands." He backhanded Pandora's face with his left hand. She gritted her teeth tight enough to crack them. Erebus put his hands behind his back. "Now you've bound my hands, but I still have my feet." He kicked her bleeding thigh. Pandora groaned. Erebus clutched Pandora's chin like a nut with his cyber arm and forced her to look him in the eyes. His organic eye burned as red as its cybernetic counterpart. Pandora never blinked. "Even if my feet were bound, I would bite you," he said. "And if my teeth were kicked out, I would find another way to hurt you, and another, until I was dead. That is the only way you can defeat a man like me. With death." He released his vice grip and shoved Pandora's face away from him. "Weapons do not wage wars, child. Men do." Guns are just the tools. The real problem is evil people. If someone is intent on doing evil, they will find a way to do it. It doesn't matter if you take the guns away from them. It's time we stopped making scapegoats to avoid the real problem. How many tragedies are we going to endure before we wake up and see this? It's common sense. Just wish more people would see it. That is all.